Now, these are not the best of times for many employers and employees. The impact of the pandemic has left different sectors grappling for survival. The National Bureau of Statistics says that 42% of Nigerian workers lost their jobs as a result of the impact of COVID-19. And the Committee on Economic Sustainability Plan is projecting that about 39.4 million people might be unemployed by the end of 2020. According to the committee, the severity of the situation will depend on the length of the lockdown period and strength of the country's economic response. Joining me now via Skype is the CEO, Exitum Consulting Limited, Adeyemi Ajayi. Adeyemi, it's good to have you join me right now. When we look at the numbers, over 30 million people to lose their jobs by the end of 2020, that is really scary. Can anything be done to avoid this?
Okay, good morning. Good morning. Can you hear me?
Yes, I can hear you. Go ahead if you can hear me. I'm asking that the figures are quite scary for over 30 million people to lose their jobs. Is there anything that the country can do to avoid this?
At the moment, I don't know what the country can do. It's a global thing. It's a global trend. ILO said over 800 million people are going to lose their jobs by the end of this year. And at the moment, even if there is stimulus, the situation has gone from bad to worse. So that tells you to a large extent that it will be very difficult for government at this point this year to salvage the situation. At the moment, I'm not really sure the strategy that can work. Interestingly, some recruitments are going on, but not as it used to be. So it's a terrible situation.
All right. Now, the Central Bank of Nigeria is injecting another trillion naira into the economy as a way of stabilizing the economy. How far would that go?
Well, that would be like a drop in the ocean, like a drop of water in the ocean, because about 42% of people that lost their job within the pandemic. And I want to tell you, from my own personal estimate, it may be hitting like 52, 53% job losses by the end of this year. So even if there is a stimulus to which of the industries, manufacturing, aviation, hospitality, entertainment and sports, even if we go ahead, if the government does that, I believe businesses will struggle this year. We may flatten the curve next year, but this year, I'm not really sure.
All right, we're looking at different sectors of the economy, like you mentioned. Agriculture comes as the greatest employer of persons. And when it comes to going into agriculture, it's quite easy one way or the other, but if you want to do it on a larger scale, everyone talks about the issue of capital and credit facility and all of that. If agriculture has to be the alternative to try to stabilize and ensure that it sucks up those who might lose their jobs from manufacturing and other sectors, how likely would that be?
Yeah, agriculture will be a saving grace. That's the truth. But again, if we go into agriculture now, we're not getting immediate return. And there is need for huge capital investment in agriculture in Nigeria. The food shortage, meeting food demand in Nigeria is still a very wide gap from the supply. So agriculture could be a saving grace. But again, if we're going into agriculture, that may not be an immediate solution. It will be a long-term solution. So if we're bringing agriculture in, it's going to be within the value chain, which basically will not be production. It will be more of distribution and processing. So agriculture will be a saving grace, but I do not think it will be in the immediate term.
All right. Now, with that number of the projection that we are seeing, more than 30 million people, what can be the implication in the long run for the economy?
The implication is that the economy will need to give birth to itself again. You know, what that means to a large extent is that the economy may not likely come back to normal shape this year. Next year, maybe quarter two. And again, the GDP is expected to shrink by about 3.3, 3.4%. So that has serious implication on how we can rebound back. We've read IMF reports saying next year could be a better year. But with this prolonged lockdown and rising cases, which may probably lead to another lockdown, it's not clear if by this year the economy will recover. I'm not sure. I'm not sure of that at all.
All right, so we have to leave it here now and still look forward to greater days ahead. Adeyemi Ajayi, CEO, Exitum Consulting, thank you very much for talking to us. Watching TVC Breakfast. Now, there are not the best times, or these are not the best times for many employers and employees. Now, the impact of the pandemic has left different sectors grappling for survival. The National Bureau of Statistics say that 42% of Nigerian workers lost their jobs as a result of the impact of COVID-19. The Committee on Economic Sustainability Plan is projecting that about 39.4 million people might be unemployed by the end of 2020. And according to the committee, the severity of the situation will depend on the length of the lockdown period and strength of the country's economic response. Joining me now via Skype is the CEO, Exitum Consulting Limited, Adeyemi Ajayi. Adeyemi, it's good to have you join me now. If we look at the outlook and the projection, it doesn't seem to be very encouraging. Anything could change, though. But what kinds of deliberate investments should we be doing at this time as a government and as companies and in the economy generally?
Yeah, thank you very much. Good morning. One of the investments that I think should be done now is investment into research. We need to first research more economic research, medical research. Medical research to get out of this situation, and economic research to really know the real direction that we should go as a nation, that the government should go into. These are very important. Another thing that I believe in terms of investment that can be done now is to focus economic-wise on agriculture. And again, it's not something that we expect immediate return. We should also invest in the small-scale businesses, which will be selectively focused on at this point.
All right, now you talked about the issue of research. Now, research, a lot of people, depending on what sector, what is researched on, a lot of people will say it would take about 2, 3, 4, 5, or sometimes even 10 years for the outcomes of research to be beneficial to anyone. If the government decides to go into that now, I wonder how many more people might be out of job by the end of the research.
Yeah, the truth is, whether during the research or so, there will definitely be job losses. Okay, the research basically is to help us focus on how to get out of the woods. We're already in the woods. We don't expect immediate recovery. First, we have to be resilient. From being resilient, we go to flattening the curve. And at that point, we need to take decisive decision. We're all in the dark. We need knowledge to get out of it. That's why I'm just mentioning that word research. So at this point, may not give immediate solution. But again, a lot of economic researchers all over the world are, speaking to the situations at the moment.
All right. Now, what sectors of the economy will be most critical at this time, looking at the returns and also ensuring that it helps to stabilize the economy to a great extent? What sector will be most critical in this?
Yeah, I will mention 3 most critical sectors. The health sector is very critical because once we deal with that, it's getting out of trouble. Another sector for us is food, agriculture for survival. Again, like I mentioned, it's something that will still take a shorter time. The third that will be most critical for us to look into is the real sector, the manufacturing sector. Because as at now, there have been a lot of shutdown, no production. So these 3 critical sectors speak to the basic needs that we always face. So these sectors are very, very critical.
All right. In all of these plans, one would say the absence of adequate data could make the plans, could make the projections not to be as accurate, and thereby compounding the implications. How more difficult or challenging is it with inadequate data?
Yeah, data is a big challenge for Nigeria. It has always been. If we have data, we can carry out predictive analytics to do one or two things. Personally, I've been able to gather some data in terms of the occurrences of this COVID-19, and my predictive analytics tells me that we may not get out of this, even if we have all the measures in place. We may not get out earlier than April 2021. Now, if you talk about data in Nigeria, this is what we need at this time for decision making. Unfortunately, we do not have those data or information. But again, how can we get out of this situation? It's still to gather data at this moment, like what National Bureau of Statistics did.
All right. Thank you very much, Adeyemi Ajayi, for your time on the program.